only so much you can get. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, it's great. Like I feel good. I I had the sniffles recently a little bit, so that might have been a new variant. But I think it's over now. And yeah, and now happily working on eCash and Lotus, and and also doing the electronic cash conference. The link is 2022.pe.cash. And yeah, I
Absolutely.
think it'll
Don't
be
be shy
I think
about
it'll be a
that.
great time.
I had a question about that later. I'm just going to ask you 3-4 questions today, and hopefully we have time to get through them. But one of the questions is about the conference coming up. I can't obviously make it right now. I'm not able to travel to Europe. So you were mentioning recently that you're going to make an online version. So you're going to have to explain that either now or later. I'm very excited to hear that because yeah, I'm definitely going to participate from remote.
Yeah, so there's going to be a remote conference, and so the way it works is that I mean, first of all the talks you can like watch them streamed and so forth, and also between talks you can interact with the participants in like a virtual venue. Like it's top down, right? It looks like Pokemon a little bit, the old games, and you can like like we kind of recreate the venue, and yeah, you can also watch some other things there. You can interact with people. You can like sit down in like a small booth and then just video chat with people directly. So I think that's really cool.
Well, that sounds
And
really
I
cool,
think
actually. Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
and
we're setting up the metaverse kind of ideas, so why not? This is the way, new conferences should be.
Yeah, and people have been asking if it's VR, and like it's like it's just a top-down thing. So it's very simple, but I think this is much better because then you have your focus on like actually going face to face with people. Yeah, and like people have been asking about the time zones. So I think what we'll do, but we'll have to look into the technicalities of this. But I think what will be possible is that we like record the talks, and then at a certain time there'll be like a second schedule, which would be like at night, I guess, for us here. But for like people who are in America or in the Philippines, they'll be able to rewatch them yeah, from remote, and interact with people who and talk about the talk afterwards. Of course, it's not going to be as good if you're there, because like you can ask a question to the speaker. But yeah, that's the idea. I think the tech is all working out, but yeah, we'll release more and more details over time.
It sounds great. Yeah, you won't be able to get to the after parties, I don't think, in the virtual way, but and being in person is always great. I actually started
being in person is that's the most important part for me. Like the talks are more like a conversation starter material, and of course the talks will be amazing. Like got some really really cool stuff, but like I just I think 2 days ago had a conversation with Amaury, and I was like, okay, yeah, I could talk with him for like 6 hours straight, right? And similar when I went to other conferences, and like this is like we set this time apart for conversations. Like we set a conference, it is for this. So if you can make it in person, then I think that is
I agree. It's travel's getting harder and harder though, and over my life, my best conversations always eventually become in person. So you and I haven't ever personally met yet in person. We've met through groups and through a couple other things on a few occasions. I started the recording button a little bit late, so I'm just going to review what I said at the beginning, which is this is like the inaugural podcast of what I'm calling the VerbAllTruth.com. I'll explain the play on words one time, but not right now. So Tobias is in Germany, getting ready for the eCash conference, which is coming up in Prague at the end of August. Everybody who has the chance anywhere in Europe should go. I have been recommending it to my friends there, but I'm in Asia, I'm in the Philippines right now, so there's not a chance that I'm going to be able to make it this time. So that's great that you have this secondary option, and hopefully we'll meet up together. So I'm just going to go over 3 or 4 questions. There are things that I've asked, I think, Tobias before in the past, and we're still trying to narrow down on a couple of them, less than the normal conversations, I think. But and I'm always really fascinated in the projects that you've done. I know you've been working on V.Cash for 3, 4 years now, at least, and I have.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've had some opportunities and stuff that I'm trying to do that I can see how it would be an amazing fit. I know the story of, the Queensland conference where you came up with it. Other people have talked about that, so we don't need to waste time in the history of that. I think a lot of people who know you have heard, but where is the project in now, and where do you see it going in the next 1 year to 3 years statement?
So currently the project is more or less on hold because I haven't found like a scalable and ubiquitous like problem to solve with it. So it seems like there are like very localized problems, and I think we have found one avenue where that could be very useful, which is festivals, right? Especially things that want to integrate crypto, so that you can pay with the card at a festival, because internet connectivity there is always an issue, and carrying around lots of cash is an issue, and credit cards can also have downsides. So if you're able to process payments with the card, then that makes much more sense. Of course, there are already solutions for that and on the market, but none that are like crypto based.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know I've gone to festivals in the past where I've used prepaid credit cards just so I had a fixed budget, because who knows how much you're going to blow when you're at one of those events. But I remember also Cyprian speaking at PorkFest about, that couldn't see any crypto anywhere at the entire facility, and he was just, it was an opportunity to develop an ATM or something along those lines. I know people have tried ATMs in crypto, but for me, what V.Cash can be better when we tie in the merchant adoption. And I really hope you find that challenge, that solution to put it forth. I know I want to try it in our localized gardens here, where people use cash, they aren't able to bank. There's a lot of risk associated with that, and a lot of hassle of getting change. Like most often than not, when I get fruits or vegetables for my family, the lady at the key at the store has to run 3 or 4 stores down to get change for the money that I give her. It'd be so much easier.
Yeah, that's terrible.
If they just had their own internal system. Anyways, we could move from there, because the two probably biggest questions I've been trying to figure out for a long time is, nobody ever talks about the circulation. So they talk about the 21 million that Satoshi originally started with. So we've talked briefly, and I know nobody has the answer because there's a lot of computing for this, but is there a way that you can make a true estimation of eCash in circulation now, or even potentially in the future, by eliminating, for example, people who have moved coins without claiming eCash? Like, is that possible?
Well, it's like we can maybe give an estimate, but we need to get like a baseline from somewhere. So if we can get the number from any other blockchain, then we might be able to estimate it. But the problem is there's so many variables in there, and also like the term crypto means hidden, right? So like by definition, it's basically what you have to what you're asking is like, okay, how many people still know their secret number, right, to the key? And it's like, okay, like how would you even approach that? Like maybe you could look at it, okay, how many coins were moved recently, then that could give you an estimate. But we know that there's still people who hold like the coins from way back from like 2009, right? And they just are like, well, why would I move them? Like like it's almost like an NFT at this point, right? It's like, okay, I have these really, really old coins, and they're just as valuable as any other like coin on the blockchain, only that I'm one of the first ones to do that. And yeah, so like when you mean circulation, you could say, okay, like just how many coins were moved in the last I don't know, like last year, or like since the fork or something. and then you could get a number. But I think the more important question is like, what is the goal of that number? Like, what do you want to estimate? What do you want to gain from that? Because then you could go with more of an engineering view at that, I would say.
Yeah. So there is a couple of goals, but to take a step back, because I don't think I was clear explaining it. I know I've talked to you about it before. If there's a fixed number, so now we're at 21 trillion after the eCash board. If you moved, for example, if you had Bitcoin Cash, and you decided to make a move of that coin can no longer be claimed on the eCash blockchain. Like if you moved it since the fork, correct?
Yes. If you split your coins, is that what you mean?
No, if you haven't split your coins, but you moved from the original address at the time of the fork, you've moved it now, you can no longer go back and split your coins and get an eCash. Am I correct on that?
Well, it depends on where there's no replay protection on on eCash. So if you move your coins, if you move old coins and just move them in isolation, then that transaction can and probably will be replayed on the Bitcoin Cash network. And then you have the issue that like the coins that you move on eCash to a certain address, the same coins will also move on, or the same number of coins will also move on Bitcoin Cash to the same address. So if you control that same address, like maybe you just move between wallets, then you still have 100% control of all the coins. However, if you move them to an exchange or something, then those coins are likely gone and are in the hands of that exchange now. And it's probably up to them what to do with those coins. So definitely split your coins. I don't think there's any downside. Yeah, and then you have more control over them and it's more flexible.
Okay. So this is, I guess, the part of it's really hard for me to ask the question because I'm definitely a Luddite in this level of splitting the coin. If I had Bitcoin Cash in a Bitcoin Cash wallet and I've moved it since the time of the eCash Bitcoin Cash fork, I can no longer claim eCash on those Bitcoin Cash, like if I've spent them somewhere else, because I no longer have that coin. I would.
Yes, if you are not the recipient of those coins. If you send them to yourself, then you're 100% fine.
Yeah.
If you send them to someone else, then those coins are gone because you also send the eCash, like you send it along basically. They go along for the ride, except if you explicitly separate them, which was something that like that was probably the first thing I did. Like people were handing out split coins, like like drugs. Okay, hey, take this, take this. Here's some split coins. Because the way it works is like you fork the ledger, and it's a literal copy. Like it's as if you copy an Excel file, right? That's the way to think about it. And then if you say, oh, please, can you move the coins from there to there? And you could think about it as like 2 employees. And you send that email to 1 employee. But the way it works is that you can, like, it's a broadcast, so that email also ends up to the other employee, and they'll be like, okay, all right, let me update that, let me add that transaction to the Excel file as well. So 1 employee updates it, but the other unintentionally sends that over. Or maybe they like just talk a lot, and then they also move that over. Because it's a permissionless network, like they just execute that blindly and so forth. And but what then happens in what is different from the Excel file is that in Bitcoin we have mining, and mining is like you can only pick one of the files. So if you mine a block, you have to say, okay, which side of the fork am I on? Like we cannot say, okay, I'm gonna mine both blockchains simultaneously, because you have to say, like in the mining there is a field, we call it pref block hash, like the previous block hash, we have to say like, okay, this is what I want to work on, right? Like I want to work on this chain. And if you don't do that, like it's invalid. And this is also where the chain comes from, because you chain to the previous one and that one chains back and so forth, all the way back to the Genesis block. And you have like a continuous, nice blockchain.
Sure.
That's where the term, that's exactly where the term comes from. And in the block, the first transaction is a Coinbase transaction. And this one can always be different between the different chains. So these are the split coins. They will be different on the different blockchains. I think in theory, you could make them the same, but that would be like, why would you do that?
Right.
Because like first of all, it's technically difficult to do that. And second of all, like you get split coins. You get coins that are only valid on one chain. And no, wait a second. No, what I said is nonsense, because the block will not be part of the other chain, as I just said. So you make the transaction, and it's not on the, like the transaction literally doesn't exist on the other chain. So yeah, so scrap what I said before, because I was thinking about something else.
This is why it's so confusing. This is exactly why I'm asking the question, because everyone just will say 21 trillion, but we know already there's a million coins. So there's a trillion of Satoshi's coins that haven't moved, not likely to be moved.
Exactly.
So these are relevant economic factors that I feel have never been talked about in the Bitcoin community, right? Like the true amount lost. Like I know in the early days how many troubles that I had with small amounts of coins, and how many Bitcoin Cash I've moved from here to there and actually lost track of. So it's a future talking point that people are going to have to figure out. And I was just trying to come up with that engineering idea of, how can we start a countdown so that we can actually know the true number of a blockchain like eCash, because that should help being a supply and demand marketplace of what we're trying to do. That should be something that we look at in the coming features, but it's probably still too early for that. So let me move on to my third question, because that was just something that goes in my head sometimes, and I just wanted to put it out there to see if we can get it clear. The one other part about the changes. So, we've been around for a while. I think I've started watching your stuff in 2017-ish. I happened to be in the Philippines in 2011, waiting for my son to be born. He was born here in 2012. I was downloading peer-to-peer torrent files while I was bored. And I read the Wired magazine article and decided to use my laptop to mine some Bitcoin. That laptop happened to melt down, like the hard drive, because I gave it to my brother-in-law. Like so many people's stories, I'm not here to talk about that. But I was fascinated then, watched you come in 2017, and I've never heard, like I watched things change from 2016, 2017 to the HODL meme. And that HODL meme has bothered me from day one, because I'm not going to put in who's to blame, right? You can get up the conspiracy theories of banksters who tried to slow down the development of cryptocurrency. It doesn't matter who it is, but the whole meme itself is what I'd like to discuss. The meme itself stops velocity of the coin moving. The velocity is what keeps the momentum in the network going forward. We should understand those two things are working against each other. And then when exchanges came in, they really destroyed this independent movement of coins and peer-to-peer. So I like to ask you, like in the developer side, is there really any serious attention paid in the engineering ideas going forward between the HODL and number go up philosophies and the benefit of velocity of just use? Because I think a blockchain like eCash, one of the reasons that I'm building on it now is because of its low price, because of its ease and basic, that I know the walls that I can push on and lean on, and I know which has a crack in it and which doesn't. When it gets a little bit too fancy and you're trading on exchanges using tokens that you don't even know if they actually are, registered somewhere, or NFTs, we could get into the whole discussion. Like that whole phase was just phase 3 of, for me, it was ICOs, then it was DeFi, then it was NFT. And NFTs are basically just a link. They're not much more than what the Pirate Bay created, in most cases. So back to simplicity of the question. velocity of the coin. Does it really matter? Because for me, I believe there's a matter. So I want to know, does it matter that that will strengthen a blockchain? The more texts that are sent, the more use that's put on, the more that it gets loaded, rather than just tribal load of lovers and people who are going to be supporters forever.
Yes, so that is a very, very good question. And I think the answer is very nuanced. So like there's like these camps and they just go to the extremes. And I think that is not at all what is the case. There's like this, royal path, I guess. So to go to the hodl meme. So I think now that I like think more about it, and I also was at the blockchain days in Mallorca, and it was mostly Bitcoin maxis. And I also met some incredible people, right? Like some incredible Bitcoin people, some that were like really part of history. So I met the original creator of Electrum, the Electrum wallet, and a very good wallet. Like we use it in, I use it. I just received the payment on it in on eCash. Like we forked it so it works for eCash. Or Pierre did it. Shout outs to Pierre. And the guy who built it, like he's not a like Bitcoin millionaire, except but he wrote one of the first pieces of software for it. So like for many Bitcoiners or like for many crypto people, it's like hard to be like, wait a second, like weren't you like you wrote the software very, very early on? Why aren't you like crazy rich from Bitcoin? And I think the reason is that, and I think this gets to the hodl meme, is that there was like kind of a natural selection going on Bitcoin, where like the people who were following the hodl meme, they got rich and successful, and the people who like, mostly spent it or like bought it a little bit, then it went up like, I don't know, 10x or something, and then they sold. Those people slowly like weren't really part of the marketplace anymore, but the people who like bought it at like 2010 2011 or mined themselves and then held all the way up to 2015 or something, where it was like much higher, all these people, they were now really rich, and then they had a lot of influence, right? Versus the people who had like the original peer-to-peer cash vision, they kind of got more and more irrelevant. And then also, of course, you have institutional interests coming in, and then you had like this natural fit of like, okay, well, we just want to sell stuff like the institutional in order to make money, and then you get exchanges where like, okay, let's just hold it for you guys. We know how to be a custodian, right? Like all the custodians, like this is our gig, right? Like we know how to do that, and you hodl guys, like it seems like that's exactly what you want, right? Like you don't want it to be moved, you want it to be secure. And so I could see how this is enticing for
but isn't that just the banks that we left originally, like buying some stock and waiting to get rich? I didn't understand how that conversation doesn't come in, how obvious it's the opposite of what we were trying to achieve. So yes, there were a few people who got very rich. Muddy. Yeah, but you brought it up right,
like Lightning Network and so forth, right?
I understand that there's some technical parts I don't even want to go into talking about using that, but I guess I'm a boots on the ground, fundamental activist kind of guy, where I want to speak with my boots. And I don't mind the fact that I didn't get rich, because I was spending my coins. I was building projects and spending coins, and that's what's bringing me the freedom. To sit on money and hope that I get rich is to actually, for me, it's to follow the system of, I'm glad you brought the timeframes, because those pre-214, 215 were the ones of the people who bought by accident. I'm going to say, like, they didn't know it was going to go up. They weren't the hodlers. The hodlers came in when they wanted everybody else to come in behind them and fill their bags and drive the price up. The price that ran up to 2000 or 1900, in that first run up, I was a part of that. It was great. You could use your credit card to buy, a few coins on Coinbase. Even when you were in Canada, I lived in Canada at the time, and we could use MasterCards to buy, straight off of Coinbase and drop it in your wallet whenever the prices was running up, and it was just going up, and I was making money. But that always leads to these falls. And I think the sideways movement, since you brought up like the 2017, there hasn't been these rich guys that had a whole bunch. The only ones are the institutions like Fidelity and other organizations that have accumulated hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, Gemini, whoever you want to mention. They're the ones who are proposing this HODL meme more than the person who's getting rich. If you take the small meme coins out, those are a whole other story. But there's nobody hodling who's gaining wealth, right? They're following the velocity fluctuation, and by in fact holding it, they're depreciating their own value because it's not circulating. And so that's where my question is, I guess, is you've kind of answered it already, and I guess I'm on my own soapbox right now, but it's fascinating.
Well, I think there's way more to the story.
Okay.
So first of all, I mean, we have to look at it strategically. Like, if it's really true that this is all just institutions who push this, and it's all just a fake narrative, then like it's very, very hard to convince Bitcoiners, right? And you could say, oh, they're unsalvageable, they're like completely lost and we should totally ignore them. But like, they're one of the biggest communities, and they're one of the strongest communities and so forth. And they're like if you talk to them in person, they're not as toxic as you might think. And some of them are like brilliant engineers and so forth. So especially regarding the technology in order to keep private keys safe, I think they're doing an excellent job there. So I think if we accept, okay, there's some people who like actually hold these beliefs, right? Like, okay, like if you have Bitcoin and you hold it, then that's good. I mean, like I don't buy that in of itself, but there's some kernel of truth there, because like if you compare it, like how would you, like what's a good way to transfer massive amounts of money? And I don't think there's anything better than Bitcoin. And in here specifically BTC. I mean, of course, other chains are good too, but BTC really is optimized for a use case where like you move like, I don't know, $100 million or so from A to B. And some Bitcoiners are like, yeah, like if I buy, of course, currently big players can do that. But if I buy Bitcoin and I hold it and it goes up to 1 million or whatever, then like I'm also going to be a millionaire or something. Then I'm also going to be playing that game. And of course, like for us, it's like a little, like for me, I want to use it, right? I want to be using it. You want like you have a project and you want to use it directly on site. And with Bitcoin, you can't really do that. Like you could use Lightning, but it's not quite there. Like, and also you have financial intermediaries, and there's an argument that Lightning nodes are technically speaking money transmission businesses, and you just get all of these issues there. And I don't think that that exactly is the future.
So without,
I had it,
well,
go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, without going into Lightning, because I don't want to get into the slamming of it or not, but exactly to your point, this is the sideways discussion of stablecoins. That stablecoins is an on-ramp. That's all they're for, right? They're for exchanges, in my mind. They are an easy lubrication way of bringing dollars in and dollars out of the system. Whereas OTC desks used to do the same thing, right? So you would actually have OTCs that would trade amongst each other just the way they used to in traditional methods. Besides that, what is the true other purpose of a stablecoin? Because of the risk that's associated with it, it just becomes banking for me. Building a system to use Bitcoin in spending somehow was the ultimate original goal. And if you can do those, and if we can get back to those focuses, then you don't have the need of stablecoin.
Yes. Okay. So now you're touching a very, very important topic for me. Okay. So I think stablecoins. So when I do crypto business, I do most of my stuff in stablecoins because the accounting is just so much simpler, right? Like I pay developers in stablecoins, and often I receive payments. Like I receive payments in all sorts of things, but either it's in stablecoin or I try to convert some of it into stablecoins, because then like the numbers are much easier to manage, because like the price isn't as volatile and everything. And yeah, and that way you like if you have a stable coin on eCash, then you can basically have an app that is almost indistinguishable from PayPal, like from the UX perspective. Like it's like people who are used to one unit of account, for them it feels exactly the same, except it's non-custodial. They don't have to do any KYC and so forth. They can just go ahead and do that, and just use it. And for me, that's the big benefit of a stablecoin. You get all three like properties of money right away, right? You get the store of value. Of course, like US dollar isn't a great store of value because it's depreciating in value very quickly.
But it's still the highest out of anything in the world right now.
Yeah. But if you look at the market crash recently, so compared to that, US dollars went up, right? Like compared to Bitcoin, the US dollars within the last few months went up, and as a business and people like businesses see that, and yeah, of course you should, I'm a big fan of gold, but it's impossible to use gold in commerce, especially due to regulations and so forth.
I'll just butt in here again, because these are great conversations. I think they're going down this side that I love to have conversations with, but I want to stay focused on here right now, because for me, the question I guess I'm trying to weasel my way around or figure a way to explain is the stable coin is the existing system in my mind. It's to, like you said, it's to be convenient so that you can build something that people are familiar with. And it's easier for their adoption. So that's a developer, in my mind, not using the technology to its benefit. So if you took instead, like which I'm trying to do, with one of my projects, I'm trying to fix the price of a token, an e-token. So we use them, they're formerly SLP tokens from eCash. Now it's e-token on eCash. That token I'm fixing as a utility token. So it has a fixed US dollar price. Okay, so then it's the one that's being used regularly, and if I can get its velocity at such a high rate, so there's a marketplace for buying and selling of that token, then I have the chance of holding my coins, using the coins to fund the development of the project, and trade in and out of the token, which is got a fixed used rate. So for example, let's say the bus fare is $1 US, and you use a token to pay your bus fare, and you go back and forth on a bus every day to work. Wouldn't that be great? Because it's a fixed price, and you just need one token to go there, one token to go back. You could budget everything ahead. You could just put your little POS terminal that you can scan in your pocket. You don't even have to pull out your card as you walk by and pay your fee. Now that token would have a fixed price, and it would have a marketplace that we could do a one-way buyer-seller market, which kind of goes into my next question, because you built another great project called SLP DEX. I don't think it was built on our SLP swap, but it was similar. It had some pieces to it, or was it? I'm not sure. But I want you to talk about that, because you dropped it because you explained, I think one time, that it was just the one way. You could put the sell orders up there, but you couldn't put buys. And the buy order side of trading is the poison in my mind of the marketplace. It's where derivatives come into it. It's where all the options trading comes into it. And with an agriculture background, to me, is that if you have buyers and sellers that you're trying to match in books, then you have the opportunity to leverage. You have the opportunity to future contract. And that's kind of, as an agriculturalist background, that's what destroyed the small time farms, because people had to start hedging their bets. They started hedging crops in future that they haven't even planted yet. I think the same thing's happening in crypto. So if you take that buy side out and make it a marketplace where sellers can list at a price, like we remember memo.cash when it actually worked. There was a really nice growing SLP swap system going on there, right? Where we were growing a token for appreciation. Like I'm wearing this jacket. It was created by a friend of mine, the Sour token. So I traded some Sour tokens to buy this little hoodie. And it's still comfortable, right? So, and he just did that voluntarily on himself because he created a token and started to get value. I bought a bunch at the beginning. Those values went up. He created a marketplace. I could trade those tokens for flip-flops and hoodies. And because I live in the Philippines, I bought a whole bunch of them. That's my thought, is instead of a stable coin, if we got back to utility purposes of the coin, it might lower the price. So it stops this velocity of, or the spike of the up and down. But won't it stabilize the price if you can have a utility price?
Yes, but of course that's very difficult. Like, so it's very difficult to do that with the base token. If you have like a eCash, then we can't really fix that to anything. Like we can't fix it to hash rate. We can't fix it to many things. Like there's one project that I find very interesting, which is called Aragon from Karol Czechowski or something. And that it's very, very small, and I see it more as an experiment, but basically it's like in order to mine one coin, you need to expand on average one hash, right? Like, I mean, of course the numbers are different, but that's the basic idea. You get one coin for one hash. So that way you and this is very, very easy to do in the code, right? Like you just change the subsidy formula to like based on the difficulty. And that way you basically get a token that is pegged 1-to-1 to the current like price of one hash, right? Like how much does it cost to compute one hash? Or like 1 terahash, whatever, obviously. But that way you really stabilize the thing. And
so is that kind of what you guys are trying to work on with Lotus? Is that similar? Because I've heard you talk about that, and that's, I'm still not, I can't spend the time to understand Lotus besides the reward side and the nice community you built and Mr. Turtle and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think the community aspect is way more wholesome than I would have expected, but I think that's also partially due to the name and so forth.
But especially here in the Philippines, there's a massive community here. I'm so surprised. Like they give me peace and love every day and throw me all kinds of love.
So that might be something interesting, because so how does Lotus work? And so first of all, what problem does it try to solve? So the problem is that crypto is too volatile to be used in commerce. And the reason is, if you look at eCash or Bitcoin, let's pick Bitcoin, and the market goes up, or like demand goes up, but the number of Bitcoins created every 10 minutes stays exactly the same. It's always 6.25, and then it halves every 4 years, but it doesn't at all react to any kind of market demand whatsoever. And if it goes down, then like there's still these coins that have to be sold. Like they somehow have to find a buyer, because miners, they have expenses, and if they don't pay those expenses, they go bankrupt. Therefore, they have to sell the coins, and then they're in the
let's come back to that argument in a minute, because I am a farmer and a miner is a farmer. But I want you to go on with the Lotus part. I want to come back.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but that's the general idea. And what we do with Lotus is that Lotus reacts to supply and demand. So if the demand is very, very high, then we know, okay, lots of people are buying Lotus. Therefore, and on Bitcoin, the price would go super high. What we do in Lotus, we let it go high, but we also increase the number of coins. It's not 1-to-1. So if you like the price doubles, like there isn't like the double amount of coins, because that might be like we still want it to like increase in value over long periods of time, but over the short periods of time it reacts to this to these swings. And and more importantly, of course, if the price goes down, then fewer coins are emitted into the system, and therefore like there's a dampening force on
so it's an algorithmic method. It's an
algorithmic method, and it's not like there's no oracle. It's not tied to the US dollar, so it is a separate system, separate from the US dollar, but you have the stabilizing mechanism. And I think this makes it much more usable in commerce. So it will be, hopefully it will be something that just feels more like a foreign currency, other than a like a volatile asset, right? Like that's the goal. So like I can very much work with Mexican pesos when I'm in Mexico, right? It's something that I can wrap my mind around, because I'm okay, this is roughly worth, that's roughly the exchange rate. And for me, it's just times 20. It's not exactly that, but it's good enough. and I want something similar for Lotus, where it's like, okay, like you have your unit of account. For me, that's euro, and now dollar, because now they're now in parity.
Yeah, that's
But
crazy recently. Oh my God. But I understand what you're saying,
yeah.
because it's the same here. Like the Canadian dollar is 40, roughly been in the past 40 to the Philippine peso, and the American dollar is 50 to the Philippine peso. And you just
Yeah,
calculate
that way
that.
you have like this ratio,
Yep.
and of course, like that ratio can change over time, but this is
Mm.
something that you can work with. So at some point, like right now, Lotus has a very like an extremely small community, but a very like dedicated community, which is awesome to see. Like I'm a big fan. Like the Lotus community is really and a really interesting thing to see, and it might be due to the incentives of like, oh, we don't like, yes, this might go up in value, and that would be good, but the goal is to do good with it, right? Like that's the big meme behind it. And then you kind of filter out all the people who are like, oh, remember, like this guy bought Bitcoin when it was, I don't know, like 1 cent, and now look at him now, you know, that Bitcoin is at this price. Like, I mean, that's cool, but like that is definitely a distraction from the goal. And by just hard coding the incentives into the blockchain, you change the culture you get downstream.
I agree completely. And that's actually even something in aligned with that, what I'm seeing in the eCash community, right? The GNC has helped fund some projects that have brought some ground like swell from really new people and in places that it's needed, places like Africa and Southeast Asia. But one concern I've had with that is how dedicated and narrow I've seen Omri since I first saw his first speech prior to the big block wars and the fork. He's now talking about the dollar amount of eCash and how they want it to be stronger. And up until now, I never heard him mention that. And that was one of the things that I love the most, because again, I believe the long game is going to be the one who doesn't worry about the dollar, because we're building a new dollar, we're building a new currency. And as soon as we start leaning towards comparables to US dollar pairings, we're sliding on a slippery slope. So I hope that's not what he's doing. I hope he's just referencing the questions that people are asking him, because even if eCash is at $40,
it's his incentive to care, because his expenses, like he lives in France, so his expenses are in euro. So but he makes his money in eCash, right? So he gets a certain amount of money that is in eCash, and but his expenses are in euro, and the employees are in US dollar, right? Okay. So his incentive is for eCash to go up relative to the US dollar, and there's not really something that he can do about that, right? Like his electricity company will just start and if they accept crypto, they will still denominate that in euro, right?
So that maybe I'm too much of an altruistic kind of guy. You can see I got some miners in the background here, and they're old miners, they're not the new ones. And you know, I'm really happy the fact that when Anthony and Omri were looking for people to jump on board mining eCash at the fork because of the attacks, I switched all of my miners from Vcash to throw eCash. There was a documentation that I actually mined the goat farmer mining pool, mined the very first eCash block. It was documented in China. I don't think it was in North America, but the very first block.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah. So I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's a piece of history, man. Right?
It is. Awesome. It is, and I'm excited by that. But no one else cares to talk about it.
Thanks, man.
We don't have to thank me.
I was following that like, I don't know, like a news ticker. It's like, oh, we found a new block. What? We found a new block? Who is mining this? And now I know. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I've been goat farmer since my early days, 1996, when I first got online. And the reason is, I guess I look like one, and I also farm goats. And going back to the farming, that's my point is, I'm really a little concerned that Omri's talking dollars. I'm a little concerned when I hear you justifying the idea of you have to pay in real life in dollars. I had to sacrifice real dollars to mine eCash because I believe in that project. And I'm a farmer. So here's going back to miners. I think that developers don't really understand miners. I'm a little miner. Like, I'm not one of these big giant farms in Norway or in China. But I set a budget, not monthly, for my electricity bill. I set an annual budget for my 50 to 200 miners, however many I'm going to turn on. and I commit that money knowing my electricity rates. And just like as I'm a farmer and I buy my fertilizer and I buy my seed and I go plant it in the ground, I'm budgeting what I'm going to get as a return. And I hope that it's going to go up. So when I get my grain on my farm, with my analogy again, I put it in a bin. I don't take it straight to the market and sell it. And I don't know any miners who are running to the electricity company, paying them every month from the coins. They're not forced to sell like every developer seems to think. We have years of budgets, and the publicly traded companies are even better than this, because like Bitfarm, I bought all my miners from Bitfarm because it bought a whole bunch in Quebec when the hydropower went up. And then, you know, they increased the tax. So they just closed those ones down. And instead of repackaging these miners and moving them to Argentina to their new project, they just auctioned them. So good for me. I got to go to the right auction at the right time and buy all this old hardware that had barely been used. But my point is that I collect these coins. So because I'm also a software developer and I'm building on eCash, I need eCash coins to fuel my project going forward. So I have an incentive to keep them. And buying them cheaper incentivizes me again, because if and when they do go up, it costs me more to run my app. It costs me more to run my technology, but I've already hedged my bet by buying them earlier, and then I just bleed them out, just like I would by selling a little bit of grain as the price goes up, like a farmer does. And I really think that's what most mining farms do, because they aren't forced with electricity price. And most miners have really crazy deals. So they need to be assured more on the project they're mining from, because I think back, and I'm going on a rant here, but I know you have some feedback, because when switch mining came in, I didn't adopt it. I had to sit back and watch it. I understood more profit I would have made if my miners would keep flipping. But I also know that's hard on my miners, because it's rebooting all the time. They're rebooting. And when they're out in a hot environment and they're all jammed together, that puts more stress than needed. The switch miners then became like Dutch miners, and then became like these other guys who were really like, what is it called when they have they're mining a secondary coin underneath the existing coin? It's
merge mining.
Yeah, merge mining. And it's kind of, if you understand it, it's kind of a way to manipulate bringing miners on board, is what they were trying to do, to bring them into their pool. And I never did any of those things, and I lost money accordingly, but that was my choice. But that's what it leads to. My preference is to pick the projects that I'm backing and then just point my miners and go. And that's why I've stuck with eCash. That's why I have problems with Bcash, because when I was on Bitcoin Cash and I was loyally mining and trying to work with the team and asking them, hey guys, I just built an app and one of you just made some change and didn't notify the community. So my app that I'm demonstrating live to the president of a company in Manila that I flew up here to do, it just went down. And I'm asking my friends like Cyprian and whatever, can you quickly help me? Because and one time he had to, you know, reload everything, and we had to, it took 16 hours to rebuild everything off the AWS server. And it was basically because overnight, one of the developers on the Bitcoin Cash system decided to go make a slight change, which then affected everything down the road. So again,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's not good.
I don't want to get
into
into
this.
What I
like, and that's what I like about the eCash system. They are very reluctant to add stuff.
That's why I'm that's it. Like, I don't care. I like the fact that Armory can call himself an asshole, because I am, right? Like, my wife loves me, my kids love me, my friends and people in church love me, but most other people think I'm an ass, and that's good, because it saves me from a lot of phone calls.
You know, like,
yeah,
and there's a danger there, right? Like, that's the Venamani Cyprian posted the what was the failure of the Bitcoin community experiment or something, or like the end of the Bitcoin community experiment or something.
Yeah, I remember.
And I really saw that also with Bitcoin maxis, right? Like, their focus is, okay, I want to have a community, right? But I'm like, okay, but we're trying to build a currency, so a community is great and all, but that shouldn't be like the one thing you optimize for, right? Like, there's a lot of signaling, there's a lot of, like, you know, 21 million, like one had a shirt with just 21 million club or something on it, and and to some extent that is really necessary, right? Like which is why I which is why Lotus is an interesting thing, because it has like this very caring from the incentives caring
So
community.
So that's really good, because that's what happens in downtime, right? You get to see these things that are still around and growing and building. And I'm paying attention to that, and I'm all in on where I'm building, and I don't know enough about Lotus to be building there right now.
And it's like quite small at the moment. So if you want to have something that's established and reliable, absolutely eCash.
Right.
Like like it's way less of a hassle. So I don't like tell people to like, choose Lotus over eCash, but if you like, if you have like a specific use case, then I think it might make a lot of sense. Like what specifically what we have is like a forum where you can post and then you burn Lotus. So Lotus is like, I think it's more interesting because like the burning is part of the protocol, right? Like it's okay if you want to do some action, like if you want to send a transaction, you also have to burn a little bit of Lotus in order to like
absolutely love that part of it. So not on Lotus, but recently on Telegram, it was Kane. He wanted to do an AMA. So he published they made a little bot, and you had to deposit your eCash to be able to ask any questions. Otherwise, you could view the questions. It's open to the public, but you wouldn't waste a lot of time unless you risked some money. And that was a phenomenal aspect of doing it. And then he took half of that money and
killer apps.
Yeah,
in my view, that's one of the killer apps of crypto. Like these small little things that you can like just spin up in a short while. So okay, let me just like get money deposited for questions and so forth. And that's exactly what we're trying to build.
So that's what Stamp originally was, but that was like the message to text, right? Like the pay for text.
Yes. So Stamp is you. I sent you a message, and your message server will only accept it if there's a certain like Stamp value attached to it, and that is in Lotus, right? Like I sent you a message, and I also have to attach to it a transaction that has a certain number of Lotus that go to the recipient, to your balance. Yeah,
that's a phenomenal part, like for gaming, for things like Axie that were out there to get rid of the people who are the big whales. You can't. Well, going back to the white paper of Bitcoin, the whole aspect of having that money involved was to stop the spamming, right? And that's exactly what this is going to do. It's going to build the community because, but it's a reinforcing of your own tribe. It's really hard to onboard, I think, and slow.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I'm very excited about Stamp and getting it developed.
Okay.
Of course, like the incentives are a little tricky because like you have the network effect problem and so forth. But yeah, I think once it gets going, I think there will be a lot of like very like maybe like niche use cases, but that are solving that exact problem very, very well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So I'm going to name a couple of names, but I'm going to take this back to eCash and when it first came out, because it was nice, because I was a Bcash, Bitcoin Cash guy, and the real purist Armory supporters, had this open meeting and invited all of us in there. I went and joined, and Philip had a great amount of information that I could share with, and Pierre was amazing in there. It was probably the only time I've interacted with these people and asked them a lot of questions. And that goes back to the tokens, because I'm a token guy at that time. I was building a lot of app development on SLP Foundation with the problems we had with Bitcoin Cash. And, it's back end. So those seem to be solved, and I'm continuing to ramp up e-tokens now. And my business is built on those because, again, I like to use the eCash as my fuel, but the token as my fixed utility. And that's exactly what I like to do. So is there a change within that older community? You talk with them more. Are they were really anti-token, right to the end. They just let us be there because otherwise maybe I wouldn't have mined the first block. I came over because I had to use SLPs because that's all the software I built. So is there a move? Because my belief of utility on e-tokens, like you mentioned before, is a way that you don't have to use the coins and the coins can stay fluctuating. Okay.
No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. So, so I think there's a little bit of a soft divide there. So there's the people, you know, on the one extreme, there's, I would say, Cyprian, who's like saying, oh no, the only thing that actually has that is actually money is coins that are backed by something, right? That are like tokens that have some kind of redeeming value, and that could, of course, be like what Alex is trying to do in Honduras. He's trying to build a electricity-backed coin, right? Because they are in connection with a power plant guy, right? They have that, and there's lots of people, and they really have troubles because sometimes, like, you have to prepay electricity, and sometimes like you run out of electricity, and then you're like, oh shit, how do I get some? And then you usually have to wait until the next day when like they operate again, and that's of course terrible if you like have food in the fridge and then your electricity goes out. And so it'd be great if they could just use like a token, you know, in order to pay, like to buy some electricity on the go. So I think that is absolutely a really good application for tokens, because it's also a really really terrible problem. And the same with you know, other things Cyprian is working on. So that would, I think, be one side of the spectrum. Then there's other people, and it's a little hard to measure that, but who are more, no, like, we should use the base token always, and if you use it more and more, then that's going to stabilize the price. And of course that's absolutely true, right? Like if you use if you use eCash, then like you will spend more when the price is high because you get more, therefore you drive the price down a little bit, and if the price is very low, you will spend less. So and that's kind of in.
But the challenge with that, with the apps that I'm building, right, is that if you're doing 1,000 or 2,000 transactions in an hour, and it costs you $40 per side of the transaction, because that's the cost of the token for using it for fuel. Yeah, I understand it might be a fraction of it, but if its price starts to go up, then that price fluctuates more than I can fix the price of the token. It's kind of what I like to do.
Yeah, you get that's the big advantage of the token. You get stability, and you get you get that. And so I don't think that any side is 100% like it's the only truth, because like for some applications, like for example, currently when I work for ABC, they pay me in eCash,
right?
And there the incentives are aligned really well, and it makes total sense, because now I bought into the eCash vision, right? Like I'm kind of forced to believe in eCash. I mean, I do believe in eCash, but also I
but that's the nice thing about the current stable coins and exchanges that are there. That's the transition in my mind, because like you could immediately hedge your eCash into a Tether and into a cash.
Exactly.
You know, that's very easy.
But also, like, for me, and that's what I realized, is that for me, doing that is work, and sometimes you have to do KYC, and then there's also like capital gains taxes and so forth. Like there's this tail, and what I realized is that my mind immediately is like, okay, how can I pay with this, right?
Yes.
So now like sometimes my dad buys me something. He's like, oh, do you need something? And I'm like, yeah, I'll pay you back in eCash, right? And then he buys me something, and I give him the money back in eCash, because he also believes in eCash. And this way, like, he increases his stash, right? Because it's like, let me get that. And,
well, this is where the merchant adoption philosophy of Roger Ver was good at the beginning, but he, you know, I feel he burnt everybody out. Okay, because like, you know, I was a believer, and I listened to the pitch, and I ran around Canada, you know, adopting everybody with the Bitcoin Cash Register, you know, and I would give them $10 here, $100 there. I hold meetups for 3.5 years at my cost. At the end, Satoshi's Angels came in because they were funded by Roger, and rebated that fee when it went like crazy. It was like $100+ every 6 months. But so the Satoshi Angels team gave them all the kudos in the world, but they were funded. But I would sell vegetables, I would sell pigs, I would sell chickens and goats off of my farm in Canada, and I would sell them in Canadian dollars. I would use e-transfers to my bank. But every person who came, I would have 5 minutes to introduce them to a wallet and say, if you pay me here, I'm going to give you 20% discount. And the reason is because I'm trying to earn, I'm trying to accumulate so that I don't have to churn it back to dollars. Because you see, that's like what you just said about the community getting paid in it. You start to realize you don't have a KYC. And you can donate that money somewhere. You can buy something without being tracked. You have those abilities. I'm not saying everybody wants to do it, but when you go back to the stable coins, I really like Cyprian's project with the bucks. I'm going to be implementing it and some of the stuff I'm doing. But the fact that it has to use PayPal still lets them freeze it, right? Like it's just a
and it's custodial. It's to some extent like I don't like, I'm not a legal expert, but it has the same feeling of custodiality, right? Like I deposit, like I give him dollars, and then later I will be like, he will sell me dollars for burn transactions. So but it's like yes, and so I have to trust him, right? But the thing is, I do trust him, right? Because I've been around him a lot. So there's that. And
and that project is phenomenal, and because it's actually registered in an American bank, it's one of the first that's got approval that way, right? Like the Bank of Hawaii, my understanding, it's a territorial bank, right? So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, because it is like totally white, right? Like it's not like, it has all the paperwork, it has all the necessary things, because it is not it's not USDC, it's not USDT, where you can like redeem the coins. It's something different, and people like, you can look into it. It's a brilliant project, and I don't want to talk too much about that, but yeah, it's
hopefully we get him.
I will integrate.
He's told me he's going to come on the podcast here too. He was originally going to be the first guest, so he's going to be mad that I took you first. But I'll get him to talk about it, because I want to use it in some of the stuff I'm doing here.
Yeah. So, but what I wanted to say is that, I just started watching the AMA with Mark Lamb, like the CoinFlex. So that was a whole fiasco. And Mark Lamb was like, I was really surprised that Roger didn't pay, despite like having all the legal documents, having all the contracts and so forth. And it really made me like surprised that that wouldn't work. Like, why doesn't now we have to sue him, right? Now we have to go through the legal procedure and everything. And I thought that like just signing a contract and so forth would protect me from that. And now what I want to do is I want to build like decentralization maximalist, he said. Now I'm more of a decentralization maximalist, because like we can't have these centralized entities to rely on. Like we can't trust and so forth. But then I was like, wait a second, like why don't we just make people become more trustworthy, right? Like we live, like if you have someone who you trust, that's like, this is the contract, like he'll pay you up if he like loses money, like he will give you the money back.
Small town store, you got to know who you're buying and selling from.
Like just pick people who are trustworthy, right? Like and that's what Bucks is at the end of the day. It's like, hey Vin, I trust you. Here's some PayPal money, give me some non PayPal money. And I will be able to use that, and I know that you'll not gamble that away. I mean, of course, there's still a risk, like he could have a change of heart or something, or his or whatever. But that's the idea. But it solves a really big problem, and therefore we're willing to accept that. And
I absolutely agree. I'm a big fan too. I absolutely agree. It's in its infancy. It's got a lot to grow, but I'm excited to see it. I'm really glad Hayden put together that interview with Mark. I haven't fully watched it myself either. but the
It's
whole
still going,
concept,
or
yeah, no, I think it's over, but the whole concept, the whole concept of this pure decentralization, like theoretically, it's not even possible. So I don't understand how that. And actually, it's interesting because back to my activism days, this is way off track. I'm an old enough man that I used to be the guy on the streets. I used to help train non-crisis intervention and how to do consensus discussions within groups between, you know, the peaceful Quakers and the anarchists, and have a meeting when they're both on a rally together, say on an anti-G8 protest that we used to be involved with when I was an anti-globalist young kid before I had a family.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
those things are hard to transfer over when you need security, you need to protect families and a bunch of stuff, but I still have those feelings inside. So when we trained consensus, there was a really simple solution, which was is that everybody got one voice, everybody got to say their one opinion. They didn't have a chance to rebut. They just had to share their one piece. And then everybody had to agree, or else we did the status quo. That was the simple model of consensus. And to me, that's still what consensus is. If you don't have a voluntary agreement of everybody to make a change, you don't make a change. Now, consensus in the crypto community has become a majority rules. That's not consensus. You know,
No,
if you and
Yeah, like,
decentralized is the
like,
same thing.
I see that with Maxis. It's like, no, consensus is that we need small blocks. Like, no, obviously not. Like, I disagree.
Exactly.
So, like, it's just like, you're just redefining terms. And then it's like, then he was like, no, like, you know, 51% means consensus. I'm like, okay, here's the definition of consensus from the dictionary. Like,
right.
It's obviously like, it means anonymity. No, unanimous, unanimous.
Yes,
there we go. Like, English
you
is
got
great.
it. It's all right. You do really good. You do better than my German.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess this is leading. I skipped over to one question, but we kind of talked about the POS and PayPal and Bucks, and it was a part of that because it was the SLP DEX, and the SLP DEX tied in with something like Bucks is the way I would use the buyer side. Right. So a vendor for me in my market garden idea, it was originally for gardeners, and now it's for here, the vendors who are selling, they get really taken advantage of by the big players. So if they can have a chance to sell on the side or sell through a system that's not their current finances, which is, I've thought of using your eCash POS, where there can be a central ATM-like cash register that one person gives people hard wallets, and then you load it when you walk into the market, and then you just tap to buy what you want to buy with your load. And here in the Philippines, like you talked about electricity, they load phones that way. People pass load, like they pass 12 cents to each other so that they can make 2 taps, right? Like they're really familiar with using these kinds of systems. But imagine you put the vendors now on the system like the Bucks, where they could use that online because they don't have bank accounts. They could use that online with a PayPal account to actually get their cash in and out.
Do they have PayPal?
They do, but there's lots of KYC here. It's the Philippines is really compliant. They partnered both with China and America, so they're hedging their bets. It's kind of fascinating. The previous the previous government,
so they can buy something like Bucks, right? Like they could do that.
Yeah. And I'm actually setting that up in our Sabong and the rest of the stuff that I'm trying to do. And if I can't do it in the Philippines, we plan on doing it in Guam, because I know the guys who own bits there and stuff like that. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So and we'll test it out to make sure. But going back, is that SLP DEX, I want to revive it, like I told you before, right? Because I built the SLP swap for the same purpose, just to build a marketplace so people could list their sell orders there. And then, whether we tie in the local in person using the POS system, or whether they just buy it online using the tokens.
So basically how SLP DEX works, so it's very different from swap. Okay. So SLP DEX is offline. Right, so and SLP on swap, you both parties have to, they have to negotiate, and they negotiate over the blockchain. But SLP DEX is like you lock up your money, and then people can milk it but they have to send you eCash in exchange. I mean,
Perfect.
Bitcoin Cash back in the day. But yeah, so it's a really like it's a crazy system because it just works quite well actually, right? Like it has
Right.
it has
So if I find a couple of
it
these
has quite a high
applications,
reliability. Yeah.
if I found a couple of these applications and made it a marketplace and directed people in there to test it, you know, on a small enough scale that I'm willing to back that, to start that. Anyways, we'll do this offline because that's something to do with the company. But
Yeah, and ideally, like and it seems like you have a whole like ecosystem around that is like, oh, and then also NFC and so forth. And I think that could be that could be really interesting because then like you could take like basically SLPDEX allows you to convert eCash into another token without any big interaction. Like you only have to send a transaction. Like you look on the blockchain, you see, okay, there's coins. Let me get those coins. That's basically the idea. The other way around, it doesn't work. So you can't be like, okay, I'm going to lock up my eCash and then I wait for someone to send me coins. But then you just like you solve that by just having large enough liquidity. Like if there's enough liquidity, then like you can just like buy instantly, right? Whereas the other way, like you lock it up and then you wait until someone buys it, and that might be totally sufficient. Like it's not it's not exactly an order book.
So it's a balance beam like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, kind of an idea. It needs a liquidity. It needs a liquidity pool like a Uniswap, PancakeSwap, kind of a balance beam. Balance beam.
Like the liquidity is just the amount of coins locked up into.
Okay. So they're previously locked up. Okay.
Yeah. So the way it works is the following: you have some SLP tokens, and then you send all of those SLP tokens into a specific address, and it's a pay-to-script hash address.
Yeah.
So it's actually very easy to get the coins into the system. It's a pay-to-script hash address, and then later people can and you publish the details of the contract somewhere, and then people can spend that output. They can, anyone can spend
by depositing eCash. Gotcha. Brilliant.
But you have to send, and it's part of the
it's not released until they got the eCash.
Yeah, part of the contract says send money to that to this specific other address, right? Like if you send to this public key hash address, you can do whatever you want with those coins, right? And usually we just send it to your wallet, obviously. So you and it's in one transaction, right? You get the coins and send the you get the tokens and send the coins in one atomic transaction. Yeah.
Nice. So what let you let that sort of just sit aside? You're doing too many other things? Because it sounds like it was going to be able to have lots of opportunities.
Well, first of all, there was a memo.cash who already had something similar. Like it wasn't as good. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm not the first to market, then like it's a little harder to and of course their UX was way shittier than ours. Like our UX was better. But you know, often
they had users.
You have to be better, and so forth. And also, I discovered the NFC payments,
right?
And with the cards, so I was like, okay, let me focus on that instead. And also, it wasn't as good. And I think at roughly the same time, oh no, that was later. But yeah, I was just like, you know, people who really want to like trade tokens back and forth, then you really need to have an order book. And what you don't really get an order book with that system. You only get a like
well, and that's why I'm doing everything that has nothing to do with traders, and I don't like talking about it. So yeah, like the order book
so this is a different it's a different thing, right? It's not an exchange. It's a way to it's basically a way to get to sell your tokens. Yeah, it's a very convenient way to sell your tokens without any interaction with anyone.
But it can also be it could be a very easy way to sell them, but it can also be a place that you can point to people who want to acquire those for a utility purpose.
Yeah, so you could place them there, and it's completely permissionless, or you can just place them on the blockchain, and you can just take them off the blockchain by providing eCash. Yeah. If you I would be happy to revive that project. Especially if you have developers or something, then that I think that might
I've
make
got a
it
few
easier.
here. It's difficult for everybody, right, to find the right people in this space, and
Mm.
there's less of us and less time. The cards that you're using, is that got to do like, see, I got the Sato chip stuff, the Sato chip. Yeah,
There we
yours
go.
are beautiful. Mine aren't so beautiful.
No.
But it's the same
I
tech.
spent some time designing them, and somehow they turned out nice. If I change it out to any other economist, it doesn't
Yeah,
look as nice. So there's something
I love how you did
to
that.
this
Yeah.
picture. Thank you.
They're the best hard wallet I've seen that can be self-built, right? Like, yeah, that's got to go hand in hand with some of this. In the back corner there, I bought a little laser engraver because Chris Troutner told me how he was doing that to engrave a QR code and his private keys
Mm,
on a piece of metal so that it would be fireproof and waterproof. And I thought, Troutner, that's probably one of the smartest ideas I've heard. Like,
that's really cool. Yeah.
it is. And then, using this is what I'm planning on doing for new people here, who
And
just,
yeah, and you can engrave stuff in there with the laser really easily. Yeah.
yeah. And then they can just lock it up. The people who are hodlers, who I'm not, who don't want to spend, I give them the card because it's like a credit card in your hand. When you first got it, you don't go spend your money, but then once you start shopping, it's hard to stop, right? That's my hope anyways. And if it's eCash, that's one thing. But going back, we talked
Yeah, this currently is a token. So this uses a token.
Right.
SLP token. Yeah. So
And
that
that's
might fit even better. Yeah.
exactly. But we can tie it together. A few of these things, they string together really, really well. We both just mentioned that I don't want to say anything bad about people who have inspired me, like Roger Beer, who's become the Judas. He's a real reason that I came across on Bitcoin Cash because he was speaking with his money. And I respect somebody who walks with their money. The problem is that for me recently is I've been talking with another guy here who was a part of the Spice Project originally, Joe, and he's got Paytaka Wallet here in the Philippines. He's been funded through a Flipstarter, but it was only last minute where a big person, it wasn't Roger, it was one of the other big whales who came in and gave him like 87% of his money to fund him. And I'm glad because he's onboarding governments, he's digitizing all kinds of stuff here. And his wallet is behind, but he needed the resources to help build the team. So he's doing that now. This is a developer issue that I have, and I wanted to ask you this, my last question direct, because I really respect you and you're worldly enough to understand. Like, I think Cyprian and Vin is more like me. We're entrepreneurs. We've both started lots of businesses all of our life. We're hustlers. We're trying to provide for our families, and I hope that we all succeed. But we rely on developers who go beyond our technology and our knowledge. And developers took over crypto early, right? It was a developer game. It was the fun tool for developers to play around with algorithms and the cryptography. They run businesses as CEOs without any understanding of how to get adoption, how to do hockey stick, how you follow a PayPal model by spending money buying users. All of these techniques, they just think if they build the right tech that they will come. How can we get these two communities, which was another screaming problem in Bitcoin Cash, that everyone would voice the idea that they wanted to include the entrepreneur, they wanted to include for the businessman. I'm outlaying hard-earned dollars to hire these people to build things, and then they just quit on me and go do something else. Those two communities don't seem to come together. And how do we do it? Because without those two working hand in hand, say taking the risks together as a startup, that's what I'd love to see, is a CTO, the developer as the CTO, and a CMO as chief marketing officer, coming together and agreeing to hire a CEO. So neither of those two guys are the CEO, but you have the marketer who partners with a technologist, and you guys agree to hire somebody to run your company and then do a startup. That would be about the only way. Do you have any ideas or thoughts on it?
Well, I'm in the same, I have the same issue. So yeah, like for example, with the Explorer for Bcash, like we have someone who's helping build that. But they also have some other projects, so it's like very difficult to like get a grip on them to like really focus on that thing. And yeah, and it's difficult. Like right now, programs are just in really high demand. Like so many people ask me if I, like, just when I went to Mallorca, somebody was offering me a job and so forth, and it's like and it's the same for many other developers. So it's not easy to get a hold of them. Yeah, and also
Is
we
it
have
is
to
it
do
is
a
it
good.
possible to get junior developers without having to have 3 to 6 months to ramp them up in this space?
I haven't really seen that. Like I think the best way to do it is just to take people who have interest in programming and just like coach them a little bit, and so they can and make sure they can self-teach into the direction they want to go. I think that is what Cyprian, what Vin is doing with
He's
the
doing a
Bitcoin
great,
Mystery
yeah.
School, because I can see that he's like, oh, Tobias, I found someone who, like, he's not a programmer, but he has the right mindset and the right orientation, and and then we build like a small group or something, and like there's not much I have to do other than like just answer questions here and there, and for me that's totally worth it, especially if at the end we get like someone who's, because at the end of the day what you're asking for is loyal developers, right? Like someone who's like on the who's coming along, who's like part of the thing, and so forth. And
Yeah, I don't think you can
yeah,
buy loyalty though. Like I think you have to find, that's what I
yeah,
like about the tribes.
I agree.
That's
I agree.
yeah, that's why I think these forks have been beneficial. At the end of the day, we've been talking about it. We've become a smaller community, but the community, like you mentioned before in Lotus, I think the community in eCash is the dream that I never had. Like I enjoy, I've had one rough edge with one person who's, not a coder and he's not building any projects. He's just an investor and, he likes to spew his opinions and we're all entitled to them, but he just, you know, that's just where the place is. So yeah, I've taken a lot of my talking here. I appreciate the time that you've given us. There is a lot more detail about all these projects that we've mentioned. I think the really important thing here is getting together. So going back to the eCash conference, I'm glad you took the effort. I really want to acknowledge that you were, the flame that started this, I think, because, we need more of that. Um, I have been shy coming back to the Philippines because I used to do so many Bitcoin Cash meetups when I would come back here. I would come back here every year for 2 or 3 months. And now that I'm an eCash guy, I feel like I have to start over again. But instead, you gave me a lead to show this conference is a community that you're proud to be about it. And we're talking about the issues that we're all talking on our own about. CBDCs are coming, we all know it. It's great that you started with wanting people to talk about that, but I'm sure more is going to come out of this conference. What more do you have to say about it? Like, have you added any more speakers? Have you, it's going to be 3 days.
Yeah, we got
right?
a few. Yeah, it's 3 days, but the first day is more like a meet and greet, right? So it's the meet is 2 days. Yeah, we got a few tentative speakers, but like we don't want to announce anything that's not like fully confirmed.
Good.
And yeah, so I mean that's what I wanted. Like when I came back to Europe, I was like, okay, let me use my time here, right? Like there's a big eCash community, like Amaury, Anthony, Pierre, Fabien, they're all in France, right? I'm in Germany, and there's a bunch of like Polish people also that are interested in this. So I think this is a great opportunity to get everybody together and to exchange information, because like we've been locked up for 2 years almost, and we want to see each other again, or for the first time. And and we got some really, and I try to make a diverse set of speakers, right? It's not just eCash, it's also Lotus, obviously, but also we got Thorsten Pohleit from Mises Institute in Germany. And I think we need to talk more to people who are on like the peripheral of crypto, but they only really ever get to see a Bitcoin, right? And everybody just asks them about Bitcoin. But I want to ask them. I want to ask him about stable coins, about gold, about all of these things that like Bitcoiners almost like I don't know how to say that, but like they almost shun that kind of these kinds of discussions. And
they do now.
I think now.
They really didn't back in the day, right? Like,
but I think it's warming up now a little bit. Like when I went to the conference in person, they're much warmer to these ideas than during the hash wars. So that's good to see.
Okay.
But yeah, no, like we can't rely on them. Like we can't rely on them, right? We have to build our own ship. We have to build our own arc, and if we can tell them about it, but like we
so if you participate even online, like I think it was Alex when you were talking with Alex that you guys were talking about having another one in another location. I'm gonna pull away from Honduras and say, hey, Southeast Asia is a nice place too. We got some beautiful islands, 7,600 of them just in this country alone. So
yeah, but the biggest variable is always travel, in my opinion, right? Like is it easy to travel to? And I think with the Czech Republic, it was like a good,
so like here's a suggestion about that, because the face-to-face is great. Like when I moved and emigrated my family here just recently, we went through Vancouver and visited family in Victoria. I got an opportunity to meet Andy Zegers in person, right? Like he came swimming with his kids with his son and my kids, and it was wonderful. Those things are personable because we're human beings. But the exchange of information, I think, needs to be more often with a wider group. So that's why this online part I'm excited about, because the people can't be there in person. Well, why couldn't you do a once a month meetup? Why couldn't you do some kind of space, right? Where you didn't have to attend every week. Like the problem with the meetups for me physically were that I had to physically be there to introduce new people. But if you have a virtual space and people just flow in and out, and you got the free time on a Friday night and you're having a beer, why not just go and chat with some people that are like-minded? I'd like to see if that online overview that you're
and we do have that in Lotus. We have a weekly, what's it called, fellowship. And
so explain it, because I'd like to know about it. The invite where I can go there and somebody else can go.
Yes. So I mean, it's quite unstructured. So the way it works is that we have a Discord, Lotus Discord. I think the official Lotus Discord. I think it's on our website, givelotus.org. If not, then I will instruct someone to put it there. And yeah, you can go there. You can like we have lots of conversations there all the time. It's about all sorts of, like it's not limited to crypto. It's like also about fitness. Like some people are posting how they're doing there. It's about philosophy a lot, right? Like Christianity, but also like a philosophy of money, of course. Like MMT sometimes comes up as an idea and so forth, and economics. And every week we have a fellowship where we just come together in a call and just discuss anything we want, right? Like
that sounds great.
Lotus related. And
that sounds great.
And like you can join and like explain your idea there, and maybe people like that. It's very like it's very small right now. Like I think now it's like 6 guys or whatever, but
small's better to where you start. Honestly, that's where the stuff roots. So going back to the conference, it's 2022.be.cash is where you go, right?
Yes, 2022.be.cash.
Awesome.
Like there used to be a discount code RUCK, but I think it's just 1 day left, so I don't think you can make that in time, which for 21%. But now we got I think eCash 15 for the
good for you.
End of the month recap or something. And yeah, but there's only 15 of those left. So
and these are for the in-persons. There's no online registration yet. There will be.
No, there is. You can buy the ticket, and at some point the ticket prices will go up. So yeah, good luck. But they're not that expensive, so you can.
Awesome. No, it doesn't matter, and it's great. It's great, like you said, it's a great way that you'll be able to interact with everybody. Everybody's coming there wants to interact, so it's not like a conference where they're just taking their money and then right out the back door at the end of their speech. we want to all
Yeah.
get together. That's beautiful part
No,
of it.
it's a community thing, and yeah, it's a big task. I'm a little like, stressed, but now I got more and more helpers, and they're just randomly emerged, and I'm like, okay, well, great. That's exactly the person I needed, and yeah, like, yeah, someone other than me really wants this conference to happen.
Definitely. Well,
And
and I think you're seeing it right there. Like, you don't have to be stressed. You understand that the people of Pure Art, they're gonna appreciate whatever you can give, and we're all human. We only can give as much as we have. Anything else you want to share before we end here? Because you've given me so much of your time. I appreciate it.
yeah, well, the conference, as I said, also you can follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at TobiasRuck. And if you want to see the bCash project, it's be.cash, and you can see the cards there. But just be aware that, like, I'm still waiting for like a solid project where we can involve that in. But yeah, that's the idea.
Cool. Thanks again for all your time, Tobias. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days, if not all these Zoom chats.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Have a great day. Thanks again.